growth and division. The question today is, why must cells grow, and what problems do they have when they do grow? Your code is 321. Your topic is cell division, and you should be on page 8. So, as we go through this, there are 3 vocab words you got to know, and we'll try and get through these as quickly as we can. And some of these you might recognize. They all pop up at once, so I apologize for that. But the first word we got, I'll try and explain each of these to you too. First word we got is diffusion. And that is when stuff spreads out from where it's highly concentrated into an area where it's less concentrated. Don't go on beyond that, because I want you to write these down later. It's going to be tricky, but just write down diffusion for now. The second word that's on there is osmosis. Osmosis and diffusion are the same action, except that osmosis happens through a barrier. Like, it's got to go through something. You know what I mean? Like when somebody's got the Axe body spray on and it just leaks out into the whole room. That's diffusion, because there's no barrier between that spray and your nose. It just spreads out. Osmosis, it has to go through something, so it's got to penetrate a barrier. And the barrier we're talking about when we talk about cells is the cell membrane, this thing right here. The cell membrane is the thing, it's kind of like the skin of the cell, right? We've got this layer on the outside of us. It keeps the inside inside and the outside outside. Does your skin let stuff out?
No.
Do you sweat? Yeah, your skin lets stuff out, right? Does your skin let stuff in? Yeah, you can absorb stuff through your skin. You can put creams on and stuff like that calm itching, or that, Barry Bonds took steroids by putting cream on his arm and got a gigantic head. Now planets orbit around his head. So, the cell membrane is like the skin of the cell. And it too, just like your skin, which lets stuff out and in, this lets stuff out and in, the cell membrane. Hold on, Olivia. So the cell membrane is kind of like if we filled this room up with one layer of helium balloons on the ceiling that were all touching and next to each other, and they had strings hanging down from them. That'd be like this part up here. So this is like a 3-dimensional thing. These are all the balloons, and those are their strings hanging down. And on the bottom, we had non-helium balloons packed on the bottom, and somehow their strings hung up. That is what the cell membrane kind of looks like. And if you can picture balloons touching each other, do they fit perfectly, or are there little spaces in between? That's the barrier that they go through. When osmosis happens, little molecules can fit through those spaces in between the balloons and go in and out of the cell. But if it's too big, they can't. They can't do it. Olivia? Right here? Others. So it lets some stuff in, but not other stuff. It's kind of like a protective barrier. If bigger things do need to get in, we'll talk about this in another unit, but they use these things. They're called protein channels. And the analogy I've got for that is they used to have a game show on called Hole in the Wall, where you take a pose or whatever based on what the thing that was sliding towards you, and if you were in the right pose, it wouldn't push you in the water. It would just past you. And these things, these protein channels, are kind of the same way. They've got specific shaped openings, and if you fit in that shape, you can go through that secret door. But if you can't fit in. Kind of like that hole in the wall game. What's that? Okay. So, next thing sorry, I can see people are still writing. Briefly, about why cells get bigger. Cells get bigger and grow because they need to replace old and dying cells, right? So every time you go like this, you lose lots of cells, right? Your skin cells fall off all the time. Yep. And as a result of that, they've got to be replaced. So new cells grow to take their place. If you've hurt yourself or damaged some of the tissue in your body, new cells have to be grown to replace those, right? Like when you get road rash or when you cut yourself or something like that, you've got to grow new skin cells to cover up that hole in your body. You can't have an open wound on your body forever. It gets infected and you die. So your body heals itself. And the third reason that cells grow is if the organism is getting bigger. The one reason that cells must divide is because inside the cell, I think you know this already, there is this stuff called DNA. Good. What's DNA do? Yes, the young man who got slapped by a monkey.
Okay, DNA is like what you look like and how your body is, right? Like if
It is not what you're so close. You're just missing like a step in there. You're basically right, but kind of a little bit technically wrong. Okay,
genes,
explain that.
it's like what you get passed on by your parents.
Kinda. It's what? Yeah, so your DNA is the code that makes you you, right? It's the thing that gives you brown hair. It's the thing that gives you blue eyes or green eyes or whatever you happen to have. It's the chemical code that does that inside your body. That's not the only thing DNA does, though, is make you look like you. It also controls what is happening, like the processes that are happening inside the cell. Your cell has lots of jobs to do. They don't sit there and hang out and live the life of a lazy cell. They have things to do, jobs to do. And the DNA is what tells it. It's kind of the boss, you know. And that boss gets overwhelmed. Think about what's a game that takes up a lot of memory on a computer right now?
Fortnite.
Well, isn't that online?
It's on your phones also.
Whatever. So, whatever. Fortnite. We'll use it. Right? If you've got Fortnite and it runs on your personal computer at home, it's no big deal. That thing's got the power to handle it. It can run it. There's no glitches or anything. But if you tried to install that on a computer from 20 years ago, you'd have some problems, right? As the program was trying to tell the computer what to do, the program couldn't handle all that stuff. The processor's not powerful enough, and the computer would slow down and kind of quit. And I'm not a computer science guy, so if I missed that analogy, I apologize, but that's how it works in my head. The program is too big for the computer to run, and the computer slows down and eventually just breaks. The same thing's true here. As the cell gets bigger and bigger and bigger, the DNA has more stuff to do. It's got to tell more things what to do. And as a result of that, it gets to a point where it can't tell stuff what to do quickly enough, and the cell starts to break down and die. Because in a computer, it just slows down and it is what it is. But in a cell, it's a life or death thing. If you don't get told what to do fast enough as a cell, you kick the bucket. And that's a bad deal for you and I. So that's one of the demonstrations you guys are going to work to put together tomorrow is how can you demonstrate this idea that something can be overwhelmed and as a result of that a process can slow down and kill it. That's going to be one of the demonstrations you've got to come up with tomorrow as the subs here. Yep, as a table group. So that's one of the pieces you're trying to figure out, right? And you could probably look up some answers to that. There's different analogies you can look up on the Chromebooks or whatever. But then there's a second reason also that they have to divide. So these are the two reasons that you're going to deal with tomorrow. So reason number 2 is that cells aren't like us. Cells don't eat, drink, poop, and pee. Cells don't have a mouth, and they don't have the other stuff it would take to do the poop and pee part. So as a result, they rely on one of those words that we just talked about to get stuff in and out of themselves. They rely on diffusion. Right? When blood cells and plasma go by a cell, the oxygen's more concentrated in the blood than it is in the cell, so it spreads out into the cell. The waste products are more concentrated in the cell, so it spreads out into the blood. Arjun? True. Thanks, Arjun.
Yeah.
So, that's what I mean when I say it can't get stuff in or out fast enough. Because as you get bigger, you start to generate more and more waste because you're a bigger thing using up more stuff. But as you get bigger, would you agree, like if you could picture a tennis ball in the center of it, it's relatively close to the edge of the tennis ball? But if you compare that to a basketball, the center of a basketball is further away from the edge of the basketball. You know what I'm saying? Picture the dead center of a tennis ball. It's further away from the edge of it than a basketball is away from the edge. Right? So the bigger a cell gets, the more area it needs to push stuff out in, and that is harder for it. And eventually what happens if that stuff builds up inside of it?
It dies.
Yeah, it dies. So don't start packing yet. I'll let you know when to pack. Olivier. Huh? I know. I know. Highly defensive. But that's okay. Sarissa's defensive too. So, point was, tomorrow, that I wanted to make, when you guys come in, number one, you're explaining and demonstrating. It's a 60-second demonstration that demonstrates why, when DNA gets stressed out or overworked, the cell breaks down. And number two, your 60-second demonstration of why this thing can't get rid of stuff or bring nutrients in fast enough when it gets big in size. So if you're thinking about it, you might need to bring in some props, or you might need to make some plans tomorrow to bring some stuff in Monday to put these two things together. Because you guys are going to stand right here on Monday, and each group is going to do their two demonstrations to show why cells have to divide. And if they don't divide, they end up dying. So whatever research you need to do, I'll leave that note with the sub tomorrow. You guys can do research if you need better explanations or like more detailed explanations. You can use the Chromebooks tomorrow to do that. Whatever you need to do, as long as you can explain those things for Monday, then we're good.